Hey everyone, this is James from TDB bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be having a talking only Inbetweenisode, not going to be drinking any tea. I am going to be talking about when are teas ready to drink. And so, there are a lot of factors to this, and this is my own opinion about when I would like to drink teas. So it's very personal in that sense. So another person might be like, okay, James, totally wrong. I'm okay drinking these teas immediately, or I'm okay drinking them in 5 years, 10 years. And there's a lot of factors to it. It's like, what is the storage of the tea? I was thinking about like what would be like a proper, how do you adjust for age? Like if a tea was stored in more of kind of a drier environment, so like a Kunming or a Seattle versus something like southern China or Taiwan or Malaysia. And I don't know that I have a great way to do it because the tea just doesn't map out super linear like that, but we're going to do our best. So I would say that the multiplier is something like 2 to 2.5 times. If you have tea that's stored in kind of a temperature similar to Seattle and you're adjusting for humidity. If you're not adjusting for humidity and you're just doing natural storage, I don't know how long it'd take. It very well could take even longer, is my guess too. So that multiplier might increase there. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to say about 2 times. So that means that a tea where I'd be okay drinking it after 10 years of, like, let's say, Southern Chinese storage, maybe 20 years of Western storage in my current setup. That's about what I'm thinking. Roughly having to go with my experiences of drinking the tea that I've stored and the Western stored tea versus tea that has been stored overseas in Taiwan or those sorts of places. I broke down kind of the rough tea categories that I have here and just tried to say when I would be okay drinking them. So first up, I think the category of tea, young teas, we're going to discard those because we're talking about when are you ready to drink tea, and it's developed kind of this interesting sort of age profile. And so for the most part, I don't like to drink tea kind of in that mid, like that they've seen a couple years of age, but not enough to have kind of more of an age taste. I tend to prefer that when it's like a little bit further developed, the age taste has a little more clarity to it. So teas in kind of that 1 to 7 years, I almost never reach for those. I, in general, don't drink a lot of tea, so almost 0 to 7 years. But I'm more okay drinking something between like 0, 1, 2 years, I would say, than something kind of in that 4 or 5 range where it's starting to lose some of its freshness and lose some of those interesting notes that you're going to get early on and develop more of an age profile, but that age profile is not quite clear enough. So I've talked quite a bit about that in the past. So the category of tea that I'm most okay drinking early, and I would say 7+ years if we're talking about Taiwan, Guangzhou storage. That would be kind of like more of your Iwu boutique teas. So the softer boutique profile, I would actually exclude factory Iwu teas from this. I think they generally kind of have this more robust feel to them, and they're not quite ready to drink at that point. There's not a lot of factory Iwus being made, or at least that have been circulated in the West. I should be clear about that. There probably are a couple factory Iwus being made. I don't drink them very much. It's a area that's far more associated with kind of like these smaller productions by these independent producers and that sort of thing. And so for me, at least, I would prefer to wait at least 7 years for that Taiwanese storage or so before I would start to dig into that. And then I think the teas start to become very tasty. So right now, that would be like a 2016 production, something along those lines. I think those are starting to be, kind of ready for me at least to drink. Next up, I had kind of Munghai County boutique productions. This might also include northern boutique productions. To be honest, I drink northern boutiques almost never. I'm not as familiar with them, so it really would have to be on a case-by-case basis, but I think I can safely say that I don't think they follow the Iwu trajectory quite as well. So for the Munghai area boutiques, I'd probably wait 12, 13 years. Probably similar for the northern boutiques, but I'm not totally sure. So yeah, this is like teas with like, okay, we did a Munghai blend from 2009, 2010. I think this is the time about when those would start to kind of be ready for me to consume. And so again, maybe about double that if you're talking about Western storage or Kunming storage, that sort of thing. And yeah, one interesting thing is that a lot of my teas are starting to get into this range, but if we kind of apply those multipliers, maybe almost there. So a lot of the Iwu boutique teas, I only buy them when they have about 7+ years of storage in them. So they are more or less kind of ready to consume for me. And that's not to say that these teas won't improve more. This is just the minimum amount of time. I would be perfectly happy to drink a Iwu boutique tea that has had 20 years of storage versus 7. Like an interesting point of conversation that got brought up with my friend Meng is like, can tea be overaged? And I think the answer is very likely yes, but it's one of those problems that's more of a hypothetical problem than an actual problem, just because in the West here, it'd be very difficult. It'd have to be someone hotboxing in Iwu boutique tea, and that would probably be the first time we would actually know whether something can be really, really overaged. And my guess is, yeah, you probably could, and part of that could have to do with kind of misprocessing and things like that, or tea that's intended to be drank young, or at least really designed to give a really rich profile young. But yeah, that's a bit of a topic for a different day. Next up, I have the first style of factory tea, something like an 8582. For me, at least, this is a little bit of a softer profile than the rougher 7542. And I've consumed a lot more 8582, and I think that's partly just because I'm okay drinking it when it's younger. And so for me to buy a 7542 that's kind of 15 plus or 20 plus years of age, it's very expensive because the tea just goes up astronomically as we get kind of into the early aughts, or even the mid-2000s. 7542s at this point are very, very expensive. And so that's probably the minimum range where I'd be okay drinking it. Whereas 8582, I've been drinking like the 2006 for quite a while, probably since 2019, 2020. So I'm going to say 13 plus years here. I would also include sort of the Iwu style of Iwu factory teas in this kind of branch too. Even though they are kind of factory teas, I think they are probably kind of on the softer side of factory teas. So I've had some early aughts Monghai Tea Factory Iwus and things like that, and they're pretty different from boutique Iwus, but I would say that they kind of fit closer more to the 8582 in terms of smoothness and ready to drink. Okay, next up I have kind of your very average factory style blend, so things like 7542, 8653. I said this would be a few extra years beyond the 8582. I said 15 plus. This is probably ideally more like 20, but again, this is the minimum amount of age to drink, so we're talking teas from like 2008 or so. And again, the 8582 I find just passes my speed test much more, and I think a huge reason of that is because the 7542s take a while. There are some 8653 and 8653 like tea that I'm very much okay drinking right now, so things from like 2005 or so. Those Shaguan in general is a little less expensive than Dai, so you can kind of find those teas now for a fairly reasonable price. Next up, I have another step up on the factory list. I have kind of Shaguan tools. For me, at least, I think these teas need about 20 years at least. I have dabbled occasionally. A couple of my friends do like these teas, and whenever I have a friend over that really, really likes this tea strong, and I do have a couple friends like that, then I know what I'm bringing out. I'm bringing out the Shaguan teas. That being said, I rarely reach for these. These tend to be very tippy, and so it follows a pretty different trajectory. These are pretty different than something like an 8653, even though it's the same factory and has a little bit of that Shaguan house taste to it. So yeah, again, that makes the kind of alternate of like a Kunming storage Shaguan tool. We're talking like 40 years here, so that's a very, very long time, which is one of the reasons why I lean towards especially buying factory tea from kind of this more aggressive storage, and I prefer to buy my tea in general with more of that Taiwan and Southern Chinese storage. And again, this is my personal preference, so I want to be very clear about that. This is not an attempt to talk down on Kunming storage. It is just I much prefer tea that has kind of this more storage that pushes it in my opinion, to kind of these more interesting places more quickly, just because, tea storage is a very long haul game. I have this giant Pu'erh over here to my left, and, tea is aging there, but it is aging very slowly. So I like to buy tea with a bit of a head start. I mean, one buying strategy that I've done for years is basically to buy semi-aged tea, whether it's factory tea or not. So if you buy like a 10-year-old 8582, to get to the 13 plus years, it's a little bit shorter. You just have to go a little bit more. And then the price is usually not as high as it would be if you were to buy something that was like a 20-year-old 8582, for instance. Okay, so I think that just about wraps up this episode. Let me know how your experience was. If you agree or disagree, I'd be very curious to hear. Again, this is very much up to the individual and kind of your own personal preference. I suspect Denny's pro chart would look very, very different from mine. So let me know where you agree or disagree, and when you're kind of okay drinking tea in that sort of semi-aged profile. And if you think there are other things I left out on sort of my breakdown, like big categories of tea. But thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time. Cheers.